Oh, snapdragons. We are back! Well, how to, cousins? It's just old Rusty here. Man, oh man, has it been an interesting summer so far. It's been quite busy. It has been nearly a month and a half since we have posted a video on old YouTube verse. And, apologies. It's just been a combination of crazy things. First of all, I've been helping out some this summer with, Flo, the Litlands, Flo's kiddos. And that's been a great time. We took a little bit of vacation time. That's good. We had a little bit of a weird hiccup because Peaches went out on a hiking trip and got and sort of disappeared. So we've been searching for him for about a month and a half. Luckily, we did find him. He's fine. He's recovering. He somehow managed to just survive off of foraging nuts and berries and mushrooms. And whatever he could trap. He's a really good outdoorsman, and so he somehow, his compass got dropped and broken, but he's going to be okay, and he'll be back soon. But we've been into so many things, folks. So much stuff coming in. We've been selling a load of things. I want to show you a handful of stuff that we're working on right now. This is going to range from artwork restoration, buying and selling various items, maybe teach you a thing or two. But let's get into this already. You know, it's just like me to go off on vacation, but somehow still find things that have value to sell. And this little trip that we took this summer out to the East Coast, to the beach lands, was no different. What you're looking at here, you can probably already tell, are a few small specimens of coral, petrified coral that died, broke off, and then was tumbled and washed up on the shore. I like that they're all small, and they're all a little bit different color, a little bit different size. And you definitely need to be checking before you list things that are of organic origins. You need to check eBay's policies to make sure that you're okay to sell things like this. Now, these particular specimens are going to be okay. I'm going to sell them as like a specimen, right, that was harvested that is petrified. It's not something that was living recently. It's just something that washed up on the shore. Now, these you might look at and say, Rusty, I don't know how to tell you this, man, but those are just a bunch of rocks with little holes in them. And I know that at first glance that is what they appear to be, but they're actually much more than that. And this was something I was turned on to. We were visiting some friends out on the coast. Brent is his name, and he's Australian. Brent from Australia. And he was telling me, because he lives out there now on the East Coast, that what we're looking at here, rather than these are not organic, at least we're not organic as like a grown living thing by itself, but they aren't rocks either. What you're looking at here, folks, is petrified peat from like a peat bog. So peat is essentially layers and layers of organic matter that over many, many years settle down in different layers, and then eventually they become hard and petrified. Like in a peat bog, peat is oftentimes used for gardening and different things, but they're actually very, very important because they trap nitrogen from the atmosphere, and that's really good for our environment to keep that the heat down and things like that. Helps our ozone layer. All that to say, these tumbled up and washed. So this came out of the ocean, folks. And it's cool because we got two different colors here. I was told that sometimes these holes form, they can form for a variety of reasons. There was a pocket of air that opened up. But in some cases, and I don't know because I just don't know on these, but it could be also that this was mud originally from organic, various pieces of plant life and stuff that died or washed up and layered and packed in layers, and then maybe it had different pieces of stems or other plant life that were growing up out of the mud and out of the dirt. And so over time, those died, washed away, leaving behind the hole in the center. And so these themselves could actually be sold as specimens as well. They're not exactly a rock. They're not exactly a mineral. They originated from organic material, not unlike petrified wood. At one time, it was a living thing, and then it died and then hardened over time. Nice piece of jewelry that came in just recently is this ring. And you can see it's an older style, and by older I don't mean antique, but more a vintage style. You got a little bit of a floral etching there, and then on the top you've got exactly a 1/4 carat diamond, what they would call an old mine cut diamond. On the inside, I don't know if it'll show it or not. Let's see if I can get it to zoom in. On the inside, you can kind of see that there are some initials. And this was common during certain periods of time for wedding bands. They had, you have 3 initials, dash, someone else's initials, and then sometimes you'll even have a date. But on the opposite side, on the inside here, you're gonna notice that it says platinum. So this is a platinum wedding band with a 1/4 carat old mine cut diamond. Paid $50 for this, which I thought was a pretty good price considering rings like this sell in the, pretty regularly $300 to $400 range on eBay, provided they're a good size. And this is exactly a 7.5, which is a pretty common size for women's fingers. And so you don't want something that's like a huge, a 12, or super small like a 4.5, because the buyers, they're not as many out there that have that size finger that want it. So it's good to have something in sort of the, roughly the 6 to 8 when we're talking about women's rings. Folks, part of why I've been so busy this summer is that we got into the largest collection of pocket watches that we have ever had here at the warehouse at one time. And, I'm showing you a handful here. I'm going to come back to these specific ones to kind of talk with you about it here in a moment. But if you pan over here, you're going to see you got about 22 small size. We're talking about size 3 to size 6, in some cases size 0, sterling silver cased pocket watches. These are all sort of German or Austrian or Swiss pocket watches. None of them are working. Some of them are missing crystals, but they are in need of service and repair. And then down here, oh my goodness. Now, some of you aficionados are going to say, oh my goodness, Rusty, why do you have them all stored like this? Well, don't get too upset. This was really just to sort and to photograph. And once now we have them sorted and photographed, we will come back in here, pull these out, and individually wrap them before being sold. Initially, we tried to sell these in one gigantic lot, but we couldn't get a buyer. That's a lot of money to spend for one collection. And so now the second round is we're going to try to sell these in lots of 5 at a time. We have somewhere in the range of 120 some pocket watches, antique pocket watches, ranging from, I would say, the early 1800s all the way up until about 1950. So 150 years represented of pocket watches from various makers, American makers, European makers. All the ones in here either have coin silver, sterling silver, or gold-filled cases. And out of the 120 some, I'm happy to report that only 14 are not running. The rest of them are still operating correctly, which is pretty amazing. But I've got a few to show you here, and I want to talk about kind of how to assess pocket watches. You may have inherited one. Maybe you come across them when you're out sourcing. You don't really know a whole lot about them. I'm not going to do an exhaustive discussion on this, but I do want to give you enough information to make you dangerous when you're out there. This right here is a gorgeous gold-filled case. It is what they call a hunter case. It's more like a double hunter because it is etched on the front, on the side, and on the back, as you can see. This one also comes with a little key, a little chain fob, which is nice. The downside about this one is that this thing has been closed so many times in a very rough manner so that the spring here that holds this open and the little catch at the edge, that thin piece of metal that's supposed to go on the back side of this metal piece here, it doesn't catch and hold anymore, as you can see. And the reason for that is that people, you should know that when you're closing a case on one, and I wasn't doing it just then, but it doesn't matter because it needs repair anyways. But what you want to do actually is to press down on the top while you're closing it, because what that does is it depresses that little, do you see this right here when I push up and down? I don't know if you can see. Yeah, it goes down, goes up, goes down, goes up. So you don't want to be pressing this in without pushing this down first, because what you end up doing is it causes the metal edge here that's supposed to catch. Do you see the difference right there in the center, how it's kind of been snapped off or kind of worn down over time, and now it doesn't catch anymore? To fix that, that's going to have to require a jeweler or someone to come in there and solder more metal on there, or possibly carve some more out from underneath in order to make it catch. And that's just a bummer because people want to have it closed when they're not using it. In this case, what I'm going to show you is you would want to press this down first before shutting it. Now, it doesn't make any noise, but see, it catches there. And it's okay when you're going to open it to just press again with your finger like this, and that opens it up. This is a beautiful face, this blue with that gold leaf around it. And the case is also very nicely etched. This is like a two-tone on the back, or on the front rather, but on the back, it's a tricolor. You've got this beautiful rose and flowers, floral. This is a gorgeous case. But it is a gold-filled case. It is not solid gold. As indicated by the inside here, this says Duber 14K Special. Now, generally speaking, if a case does not say 14K, 10K, 18K, and typically it is not solid gold. There are exceptions, but usually it's going to say, in this case, it does say 14K, which might indicate that it's solid gold. However, it does then say the word special. When you have pocket watch cases that say additional words other than just the carat purity, special, if it says guaranteed, if it says warranted, a mascot, there's a variety of different words that can be on there. Those almost always indicate that they are gold-filled cases, anywhere from a 10-year all the way up to a 25-year gold case. Rusty, what's the difference between a 10-year, a 20, and 25-year? Well, a solid gold case would mean that the metal is 14-karat solid gold through and through. But a gold-filled case means that it's a base alloy inside and has solid gold on the outside of it, a very thin layer on the outside. A 10-year case has a very thin amount of gold. The idea being that you could use it for 10 years before you would start to see the gold portion wearing off and showing the base metal underneath. A 25-year case, on the other hand, has over twice as much gold as a 10-year case. The idea being you could use it for 25 years because there's more gold on the outside of it to keep it nice and shiny. In some of these cases, you can see areas like on the bottom here where it has been scuffed and worn, and you are starting to see in the middle there, you're starting to see a darker coppery color come through because it's being worn over time. And this one also is a gold-filled case. It is not a solid gold case. And you can kind of start to see the wear a little bit there from the inside. A little bit of a different one here. You can see it's more of a silver tone, a silver color. Still got an interesting design on one side. I'm going to press this button. I'm going to open her up. That's the back side. I'm actually going to open up the front here so you can see. This is an American Waltham, Waltham being a pretty known and collectible brand of antique or vintage pocket watch. You can see here the case, it's got a number. Very nice. On the back, we're going to open it up. Sometimes cases like these, they don't just, well, actually that one does pop open, but this one, you actually have to get your thumbnail into there or a little metal instrument to pop it open. Be careful not to scratch it. This one also pops open, but sometimes you have to unscrew the back. Other times, there's a little lip, as you can see right here, that you can pop it open, and it's okay to do that. This is how you access the movement in the back to get more information. As you can see these holes here and these little things, this is the type that requires a key in order to wind it. And if I get in here, get my finger underneath and pop the next part up, you'll see the inside of the case again. And then you can look at the movement. And you're going to see there are various different types of antique pocket watch movements. This one has an etched phrase that says P.S. Bartlett. And that's a type of movement that made by the Waltham Company. And you can look that up. It also has, oftentimes, a number on the movement. Oop, drop that. As you can see right here, this number is 739160. If you go online, you can find a place called the Pocket Watch Database. And if you go in and you put in who the maker is and the serial number, you're going to get all the information you need to sell one of these. You just put in Waltham and you put in that 6-digit code. It's going to tell you the model number. It's going to tell you the grade. It's going to tell you what year it was made. It's going to tell you how many jewels the pocket watch has. Everything that you would need to know. Estimated number that were produced and everything else. And this is a sterling silver case. So it's a nice movement. This is probably a $400 to $500 pocket watch. These right here will probably bring me in the $200 to $300 range each, not because the movements are all that valuable, but because the cases are so beautiful. These three, however, are all 14 karat solid gold. Let me open a couple of these up so that I can show you the look of the inside of the case so that you can tell. All right, now I have these open. We'll start with this particular one, the Howard Watch Company. And if you zoom in, see if I can zoom in on it here and let you see. Here we go. It says white gold, 14K. Whoop, it's not wanting to zoom real well, folks. There you go, 14K gold, fine gold. Down here, we have this one, and it says Keystone, which is the maker of the case, 14K. And then this right here, again, it says just 14K and a number below it. Another thing is, and you really have to handle a lot of pocket watches to get to understand the difference in the feel, but oftentimes gold cases are quite thin on the outside. You can kind of push them and they're very flexible on the outside. That's because it's solid gold, folks, so they're not making it super heavy and thick. They don't need to use that much gold to protect the movement. But you may or may not be surprised to hear that solid gold cases on pocket watches bring a lot more value to the watch itself than ones that are in cases that are not solid gold. I've seen pretty, unspectacular movements in solid gold cases, and vice versa. I've seen very rare, valuable movements in really beat up cases that are not even gold filled. So it really just depends. So you got to do some. What is it that brings the value to these pocket watches? Well, a variety of things. How good does it look? Is the face damaged at all? Is it functional? Is it running? Is it in a gold case or a silver case? Is it heavily worn? Does it have anything interesting, inscribed in it? Was it, a gift to somebody and they have that indicated on the inside or something like that? What's the age of it? There are a lot of different things, but I would heavily recommend you use the database that I mentioned in order to look up. This is a beautiful Howard brand pocket watch. We've got some Elgin and some Waltham here. And now I'm going to turn our attention to this one because this is a unique little bird here, and I just think it's fascinating. This pocket watch is quite heavy, and it's also quite thick. It has a very large, what they call the crystal, which is the glass that goes over it, and it's a very unique shape. As you can see at the top portion, instead of it being completely rounded, it's actually frosted and flattened out. It's obviously, you know, translucent, you can see through it, but it's not super clear and clean. And I don't know if my video here will be able to show it, but there, oh yeah, right there at the top, right where my nail is, right here, you can see an air bubble. There are air bubbles in various places on this. To me, that's an indication that this is quite old and very likely is the original crystal. That's going to be important in a minute when I show you more. Now, this particular type of pocket watch is one in which the watch itself is in its own case inside of an exterior case. So what you have here is this portion that I would need to push this button in order to open up the case. And by doing that, I can pull this portion up and then the watch itself comes out. And you can see that this has a fob attached to it that is a combination of leather and steel, and at the end of it, it's holding on to the key that's needed, a number 4, that's the size that's needed in order to wind this particular pocket watch. Now, we're going to come back to this in a moment, but let's get on to the watch itself. So, this is called a fusee or a fusee, depending on how you pronounce it, style of movement. And that is just, it's just a particular type of movement, and I'm going to show you how you can access it. So you pull up from this lower part, you have to get underneath of it, you pop this up. Now you're exposing the top of the movement, the face, and you got to be careful because these little hands could fall off. You don't want to damage the porcelain face here because it's quite old and quite beautiful. Then you can actually just lift up, because it's on a hinge, lift up the movement itself, and then you can access and see it. Now, this is a gorgeous little piece. It has some stuff etched here. Let's see, it says Bullingford 7017 London. So my guess is that this is the town and or location, maybe a street address of where this was manufactured. This particular watch is made by a maker called Thomas Russell, which is no longer around. They're not producing anymore. I don't know how long they've been defunct, but it is a gorgeous piece. You can see the movement, all of the different cogs and turning, all the different components inside of here. I don't see the chain that would be in here that would go around, so either that has been removed or maybe it's wound tightly up inside there and I cannot see it. On the inside of this, you're going to notice that there are some assay marks here, and this would have been by whoever the company was that created the case for this. Various marks that indicate time period, location, and the purity of whatever this metal is. This top one here you can see looks like a sideways anchor, and that actually is the mark that indicates that this metal is sterling silver. I haven't looked up the other marks yet, but we know that this is a sterling silver case. Now, the next part is what I find so exciting. When you come across pocket watches like this, a lot of times when they have an outer case, there's something in here to separate the back of the metal from rub-in on the inside of the metal of this case. And in this case, you can see we have a few pieces of newspaper. I want to get these out, but I'm actually going to use some tweezers, and I'm going to show you what I discovered. When you come across old things like this, of course, I'm hoping that I'm going to pull this out and it's going to say something like, oh, this belonged to Abraham Lincoln or something like that. But, I'm not that lucky, folks. But I am going to show you exactly what I did as I did it. So I pulled out this first piece. Oh, it's a little old piece of newspaper. It's circular. You've got some type here. Something in Missouri. Look at that, Missouri, interest in Missouri, prepared by something Republican. So this is some sort of article written about Missouri and some sort of a political oriented article that was written, but we don't know much else. Here's another piece. Let's pull this puppy out here, if I can do so without damaging anything. I'm going to try to grab this. Okay, so I'm grabbing everything else. It looks like that's in there, but we're going to go one at a time. So top layer, or this is the second piece of newspaper, is in here. Look at this. Now this is cool. This one's connected, and I can see that there is a date, something October or November or September or something like that, 23rd. And this one's talking about medicine, cough remedies, and things like that. So this kind of stuff is just interesting to me. And then we get to the next one, and this is where I was so excited. The next piece, as chance would have it, they cut out exactly where the date of the newspaper is. And you can see that this is October 23rd of 1851, the Daily Express. And it's something city, Pennsylvania. So this is a Pennsylvania newspaper dated from 1851. So already I'm like, oh my goodness, this is at least from the 1850s, okay? The last two pieces we had in here are this little piece of paper and then this little piece of leather. It's kind of like felt leather, like tanned leather on one side, okay? Now, what is this paper? Well, you open it up, and this is, let me lay this down. This is what I found in here. Come on, you booger. We have a person's name, Levi Resell, something like that, but it says March 12th, 1831. Folks, it is 2024 right now. This piece of paper I'm holding is nearly 200 years old. And it's just been in the back of this old pocket watch case. Now, did this belong to old Levi? Maybe so, I'm not sure. Was it a gift to Levi? I don't know. But someone named Levi in 1831 was associated with this pocket watch. It survived another 20 years before somebody cut out this piece of newspaper indicating 1851. I just love it. I love finding dates. I have more research to do, but it seems as though, based on others I found, that this was manufactured sometime in the 1820s. So this is a 200-year-old pocket watch. I have not utilized the key to wind this yet, so I don't know if it is actually functional or working or not, but I'm very excited. Very cool piece, sterling silver pocket watch. This came in with the lot of all of these others. We had 6 solid gold pocket watches. 5 were 14 karat, 1 was 18 karat gold. We had 3 or 4 sterling silver ones, a couple with coin silver, and the rest were mostly 20 and 25 year gold filled cases with various movements by Elgin, Waltham, Illinois, Howard, and other well-known ones, Seth Thomas. But we're super excited to get into this. It's just a lot of time to open up the backs of all of these, figure out what the case is made out of, look every single one of them up, photograph every single one of them, make listings. It takes a lot of time, but you got to do your due diligence to find that right buyer. But you know, I'm going to put all this stuff back exactly the way that I found it, and hopefully 200 years from now, you know what I might do? I might write old Rusty Blevins in a piece of paper and put 2024 in there before I sell it, just so history books will know that at one time Rusty did have this old pocket watch. Here she is, folks, and isn't she not a beauty? This is a very large oil painting, probably from the mid to late 1800s would be my guess, possibly early 1800s. We're talking about something that's roughly 3 feet wide and probably 4.5 or 5 feet tall. So it's a very large painting. So what am I going to be doing? You can see we got this beautiful face up here of this woman. She's wearing a pearl necklace. Isn't that gorgeous looking? You can see they've painted in this kind of skin tone and then put a little bit of peach or white sort of to accentuate the cheeks and the chin there, as if light was reflecting. You got some flowers in the hair. She's holding on to her necklace. She's got this dress on. Her hair is quite long, as you can see, going down this way. And then she's got this, maybe a blanket or a shawl or something over her lap, as well as holding like a little hand fan. But it's really nice. One of our viewers reached out. They live in North Carolina as well, and we got to talking. I'm going to see if I can help this individual find a buyer for this. But Upon inspecting it, I discovered a few things. There is some damage, unfortunately. You can see the main culprits are right here. You can see this crack where it has separated right in here. Even if I push a little bit, it opens up a smidge. That needs to be fixed. Down here we've got another one. It's a little bit larger. You can see right here. I don't know if maybe something fell into it or who knows what. But this is a very old piece. Down here we've got a couple of puncture marks, as you can see here. You can see an area that had been touched up at one time has been worked on already, but even near that, there's another little puncture mark. And what's crazy is you see right here, this little line, someone had revarnished this and got a hair trapped underneath of that. Probably someone doing an amateur repair job, and that's fine, but you just got to be careful with that. The point is, I'm going to go and I'm going to approach this and try to do some repair work of this damage so that we can get this up in auction or find a buyer and it will not have any damage that that will exist, because we want to make sure that this being such an old piece, it's not going to deteriorate further as a result of that damage. There is crackling and stuff that's common with paintings of this age, oil paintings, when you have varnish or maybe thick amounts of oil that has dried. And so we're going to get into this. And what am I going to do? Well, essentially, if this were just the basic canvas, I'll show you the back later in this video to kind of demonstrate. If the back of this was just the back of this canvas, what I would have to do is cut out some fabric, some more canvas and glue it on the back. But because this actually has already been glued on another large piece of canvas, the canvas on the back is actually a second canvas on the back of it that this has been glued down onto, so I don't have to do that. Really what I need to do is I got to get some glue, some fabric glue up underneath those cracks. I need to weight it down so that it glues flush. Then I'm going to take an oil ground, kind of like gesso, a white product. I'll show you right here. What I'm going to use is this. This is something that this will be the glue that I use to help mend this adhesive for fabric. Then I'm going to use this type of a gesso, and I'm going to layer that and cake it in and try to mimic the actual strokes or the layer, exactly kind of what the layer of this is like without paint on it. And I'm going to use some tweezers. I'm going to use a couple of these little tools just to hold it up. And then I have an X-Acto knife here, not because I plan on cutting with it, but more just because it's a flat edge, it's long and narrow, and I can get some of that glue and or some of that gesso when it's time up into those places. Once it's all glued and I've got the gesso in place, I'm then going to take some paintbrushes, and the idea at that point is I just need to mix oil paint and put that over the top of it. And the idea being, if you were to look real close, you're going to see the areas that have been touched up. There's not much I can do about that. But my hope is that if you're standing a couple feet away or further, your eye is not going to be drawn to those locations anymore, and we'll see that I have touched it up to mimic essentially what this oil painting was originally. Last up, after I do all that work, I can't tell how dirty this is, if that dirt possibly is underneath of an extra layer of varnish, in which case the only way to clean that would be to strip the varnish, clean it, and revarnish it. But I don't want to mess with that. To me, that's too much work, and I think that the risk is too great that I would damage this piece. So I'll take a small area that's not in a focal spot. I'll do a little bit of cleaning, and just to see, does it bring much dirt up? If that's the case, I will actually spend time, which would probably be the most time consuming part, and I will actually clean this entire piece. But we're going to get into it. I'll give you updates as it goes, but I'm going to start into this today. It's going to take some time because you got to let time go by while this stuff dries, and then of course, since it's oil paint, it takes a long time for that to dry as well. So once we paint it, we'll have to make sure that dries completely, and before we put a little bit of varnish at the very end. But I'm excited to get into this. It's a beautiful piece. It definitely warrants and deserves to be restored, and I'm hoping that we can find a buyer out there. All right, folks, it's been a couple of weeks. Took a little bit of vacation time and stuff. It's good for the mental health, good to spend time with Flo and the little ones. But as you can see, I have, prior to leaving, I finished doing the gluing of these, portions here that had punctures or tears. And then after that gluing was finished and complete, I then got out the oil ground, the white gesso. And you can see that these spots here have been filled in right here and over here. And these are very delicate areas because, of course, this is right on the focal point of the entire piece. But when you get down lower, so here again is a spot here near the arm. Now, if you can see that I've built this up a little bit here, and the next stage is to mix some paint, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But got a few areas. They've been built up. They're nice. I'm going to go ahead before I start to apply paint. I'm actually going to take, it's a gambling product, I believe, which is, it's to clean off dirt and stuff off of the top of oil paintings. It does not damage the paint or the varnish. It just takes anything that's on the outside of that off. So I want to clean the area properly, let that dry. And then as you can see, I have some oil paints here. I'm gonna, to get out what I need, I just used I guess a burnt umber is where I'm starting, but I'm gonna get some greens and some blues and some browns and some white, of course. Now, I don't use the typical, wooden palette here. And what I like to do is get these pieces of plexiglass, and what I do is I tape a piece of white paper underneath of it. So there are different ways in which people approached oil paintings, and I'm not sure if it was done on this particular piece or not, but a lot of the old masters, they would actually do the base in black and white, all right, or in the background in some sort of burnt or raw umber, dark colors. They get the contrast correct with the white and the black and the grays of the whole piece. They get it positioned and everything. Then they come back in with translucent paints, and they paint tiny layers of thin paint, and they let that dry, and then they might even varnish some spots. Then they'll go back in again. And I don't know if you can tell on this particular piece because of the light shimmering on it, but there's heavy, heavy glazing on the background. But then when you get to the foreground, yeah, there's some glazing, but do you see how much thicker and glossier this is? They do that for effect. When you heavily varnish the background and you don't varnish the foreground as much, what that does is it makes the foreground more three-dimensional looking in appearance. It pops. And so if you think about that technique of using multiple translucent layers of paint over white, what ends up happening is you're not actually mixing the paint. You might do a layer of blue, you might do a layer of green, and if you do that, these are both translucent with that white or gray background. What happens is the light passes through those, it hits the white, and it comes back at your eyes, and your eyes are actually what sees the green, because it's just one layer of a color, a primary, over another primary, and then what you're viewing is a secondary color. So if it was blue and red, you're going to see purple. If it's green, or like shades of green, that's probably shades of red and blue. But with that principle, folks, that's why I prefer using something that is translucent with white on the background, because as I mix the paint, as I'm preparing a paint that I'm hoping will match what I'm needing to color there, I'm going to get the best possible color that I can see. I can see what it looks like when it's translucent. When I mix it, I see what it looks like. I'm going to actually take this piece outside so that I have regular sunlight to see what I'm looking at, as opposed to these, different lights that I've got in here in this drop ceiling. This is not in ideal conditions because the color is not going to look as true as I want it to. So what's great about these is, folks, I can take this one piece of plexiglass. This is about $4.50 to $5 at, say, a Lowe's or a Home Depot store. They come with a plastic layer, as you can see, thin, a coating on either side. So if you were going to use this for something, you would take those off. But what I do is I actually get two different times to use this. What I'll do is on one side, I'll put the paint, I'll mix, it's translucent. I've left this plastic layer on here. I can put white on the back. I can use it when I'm done. I just peel this off. Now I've got a fresh surface. Flip it over, do the same thing. White on the back. Now I've got the plastic surface. That's the second use. And then if I only want to use it 2 more times, I can do the same thing. Why, I can do it on the back and on the other side. Or what I like to do is just take some typical saran wrap, plastic saran wrap that you would use, like say in the kitchen, and then just cover it. And I can do that as many times as I want, and I use just one piece. That's a way of reusing something multiple times. I'm not layering over layer of paint that I've used in the past. That doesn't help me, because as I try to mix, I'm always going to see that underneath layer, and I might get the colors wrong. So I'm going to get the colors out here that I need for starting with. I'm going to get some linseed oil and some dry and medium, which I will mix in with those paints to help it dry a little bit faster. The linseed oil and I use like an odorless, non-toxic turpentine type paint thinner. And the use of those will help thin the paint, but then if I want to thicken it or help it dry faster, then I use the dry and medium. But I'm going to jump on this and try to get this done for a friend, friend of the channel. I'm doing this for her. This does not belong to me, but I'm going to get it done. And then I'm excited to show you the next thing. You wouldn't believe it, but while I was in the midst of getting all this done, I came across another large painting at a estate sale. And believe it or not, I paid only $100 for this. It also needs significant repair. I'll show you that in the future, but I need to get this one done on the table so that I can then start on this gentleman. This is such a cool piece, but you can see that this frame is absolutely destroyed. It's crumbling, it's falling apart. It would take so much work and time and money to fix this. It doesn't even make sense because the rest of it would just start to deteriorate. But as I back up and I show you the back here, it's a very, very large piece. If you can believe it, the tear, they have simply put duct tape behind it to keep it from tearing. And so what I have to first do, and this is also just to free up some space, you can see I got the paint over here that I'm going to get started on shortly. But I'm going to go ahead today. I'm going to have to take some trash and some stuff out of here, out of the warehouse today anyway, so I'm going to get this. I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the frame. Its frame is... the actual canvas is right here. Here's a spacer. I think they call that a rabbit maybe. And then the rest of this is a multi-layer, heavy-duty, heavy frame, solid wood. But I'm going to remove this piece. I'm also going to probably have to take it off of the stretcher. This is the stretcher because not only is it damaged, it's incredibly loose. It's not tight. So I would like to salvage this original stretcher though. So what I'm going to have to do is take it off. I will then do all of the work to repair the piece itself. I'll then have to very delicately attempt to re-stretch it on the same stretcher. And and then after all of that's said and done, then it's going to be time to find a way to get it reframed. And this is not going to be a cheap one to reframe, probably because of just how the sheer size of it. But I'm going to at least get the frame off of it, see what I have to work with, and we'll go from there. All right, I got her out of here. I put her over here, or him, rather over by the other. And you can see they're very similar in size once you get it out of the gigantic frame. And once I frame it, it will be just slightly larger. This would be actually a cool pair, I think, to have together. But alas, I don't own this one. But anyways, going to try to get her repaired over the next week as far as the paint is concerned. And after the paint dries, and it's oil, so I'll put a fan on it. That'll speed the process, put a little bit of mix and medium to make it dry faster. And then it'll be time to glaze over those spots. And then I'll start on this gentleman. So the cool thing about this is I bought it at an estate sale. It was $100, and likely simply because of all of the significant issues. Large horizontal tear here, about a medium-sized vertical tear as well. We're missing a little bit of a piece in the center there. It's starting to come down to his hairline, so I'm glad it stopped before it actually tore into the face portion. We got another puncture over here by the arm, but here's what's cool. I don't think that they knew, because it's very faint, but down here at the bottom we do have a signature. The signature says Hugh Collins, and it says maybe a word, but it says 1880. Hugh Collins is he's a Scottish painter. He died in, I believe, 1893 or thereabouts, and his stuff has sold for thousands of dollars at auctions before. Now, what will the actual price be once I get this repaired? Because it has had damage, I'm not really sure, but I do think it's worth salvaging. I think it's a beautiful piece, and we're going to see what we can do with it. You can see here on the floor, I've done a little bit of work today, fulfilling a few items. This is what I do first thing in the morning. Is I usually go through, I find the items that have sold, I pay for the label, and then I lay them out, and once they're all done, then I go to packaging stuff. But we got everything ranging from this old school Packard Bell, a computer there. We've got some old some comic books. We got a few pieces of jewelry here, an old cabinet card. We got a binder here full of some old baseball cards, and some Bakugan here with some pieces. And then up next we got a tub full of books we got to go through, and some other various things. This is an interesting tub right here, because what you're looking at, aside from some of these little pieces, which could go to a few other things, however, if you'll see right here, this is the USS flag. And for those of you who are familiar with, or maybe grew up in the 1980s and early 90s, we're talking about G.I. Joe. And what this is, it fills up an entire tub, and it's only about 80% complete in here, but these are all of the components to put together the USS flag aircraft carrier, which I may be wrong, but this is possibly the largest single item that they ever made for the, those like 4.5 inch or whatever the height is of the G.I. Joes from like the 1980s. And because this is only 80% complete, we're not going to be able to get the price we really want for the whole thing. And so this is what we're going to do instead. We're going to go through and we're going to sell these all off piece by piece as replacement components for people who want to have a complete item. Now, the thing about these that's awesome is that nearly everyone, if not every single one of these pieces, is going to have a serial number on them. And you can utilize that to look up the component itself, and then you can look that up to see what they're selling for. You can see that this particular one says stern on it, so you know which portion, what side of the carrier that this is supposed to be at. But then if you look right here, and they're all in different places, but this is the number I'm talking about. This one says M4061-0. So if I look that number up, there are different sites you can look up specific components for G.I. Joe. But if I even put in the USS flag, and then I put this part number, most likely I'll find others that are for sale or have sold. But we've got so many components and pieces in here, folks, that we need to go through. And so that's going to be, a portion of a day for one person to photograph every piece, look up the serial numbers, make the listings. But that's going to be a good amount of money. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that everything in this, once sold, will bring us in over $1,000. Some of the pieces that were flat for the aircraft carrier, where like the airplanes, the aircraft would land on, or, those can sell for $100, $200, $300 a piece just for one portion, because people want the entire thing. Full, complete USS flags with the box have sold as high as $2,500 in the last 90 days. So if you have or know some people who have some old school G.I. Joe or G.I. Joe vehicles or components, get those puppies out and take a look, because they have pretty high values depending on what they are. Another fun piece that we got in this week, actually it was last week, beginning of last week, was this Roland FA08. And this is a keyboard, as you can see, but it is much more than that. It's a synthesizer, and there's all these different things you can modify, different sounds you can create, looping stations, samplers. There's so much on here. I have no idea how to even really use this to its full capability, but somebody will. It comes with its own stand and with a chair. When I got this, there was a bummer, and that was that the power cord was missing. So this, brand new, this is something like a $1,700, $1,800 piano, which is quite a lot of money. But without the power cord, I couldn't even test it to make sure it worked. So what I did was I got on eBay and I found a replacement cord, a power cord. So I plugged it in. It arrived yesterday at the warehouse. I plugged it in. It works and functions. That's awesome. Now the downside of it is that something of this size is very difficult to ship because of how large and potentially breakable it is, or could be in transit. And so I'm going to try to sell this locally on Facebook Marketplace. This doesn't belong to me. We're actually selling this for some people we know locally to help them out. That's part of what we do in our business, is help and sell things for other people from time to time. But I hope to get somewhere in the $800 to $1,000 for this piece of equipment now that we know that it functions correctly. I have to tell you that we recently got a very large amount of sports cards in here. You can see we've got a variety, everything ranging, every sport you can think of. Well, not every sport, primarily baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, things like that. But we've got a variety of things like old school Michael Jordan cards. We've got newer basketball card sets, as new as last year, 2023. And then back in the day, we've got still unopened packs of football, baseball cards. And then we've got vintage cards as well, things that need to be sorted through. This is like almost the entirely complete set of the 1977 Topps baseball. We've got, as you can see, other nice King Griffey Jr., some really nice baseball cards in here. We've got old WWE wrestling cards, and I mean, the list goes on. It just takes a long time. This is a binder full of old Reggie Jackson baseball cards. I mean, it is going to take a while. Now, sadly, unless they are very specific years and very specific manufacturers, a lot of these packs of cards don't really bring much of anything anymore, because after about 1985, they started mass producing this stuff to the point where even the most sought-after collectible cards of the collectible superstars, there are still a lot of those out there graded as a 9 or a 10, and so even high-quality cards are pretty easy to come by. So this entire thing of packs is probably not going to sell for more than $40 or $50, if I can even get that. However, we have some really nice cards that in different stacks here that we are likely going to start sending off here before too long over here to a grading company, probably PSA. Now, the thing is, it can get quite expensive. You're going to spend somewhere around $200 for an annual membership, and you do that so that you can get the cost of a card graded under about $200 in value, up to $1,000 in value, for around $15 to $18 a card. And it's about a 45-day turnaround. So you're already spending some money to get that card graded. You have to know and do your research that it's going to actually grade out well enough that you're going to make your money back, because you don't want to invest more than you think you're going to make. Also have to think about the time it'll take to sell it. So this is a niche. It's not something we spend a ton of time with, but nearly all of these cards are being sold for, again, someone locally. So we don't have any money invested in it. We have a deal where after eBay fees or whatever are taken out, we take a percentage of what's left. It's the much smaller amount of what is left. The owner gets the majority of the money, and we just get paid for the work that we do. You can see behind me, just in this one room in the warehouse, we are almost at max capacity, and we have been doing somewhere between 50 and 100 orders per week in the last 4 weeks. So fulfillment has taken a ton of time. I hope some of this information helped you folks. We're going to get back on the regular weekly routine, getting at least one video out. Also, keep a lookout. In a couple of days, we'll be releasing one on our What Sold channel. We have continued the podcast. We've had somewhere nearly 40 different episodes up lately. So if you like listening to things on the way to work or on the way home, check that out, and you can watch the video version. We'll be uploading a lot of those videos coming real soon. You guys have a good week, and good luck treasure hunting. Let's go find some treasures. Rusty, 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 how to? Rusty, 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 how to? Rusty, Rusty.